The A. Whew, man, look at all the more room we have now. As you can see, this is all ready for some poly. And yeah, I'll just touch it and that will prove to you that it's ready for poly. See, there. They didn't have the kind I wanted, but they did have the kind that I ended up getting. That's this stuff. I'd rather use slick sand. Nobody seems to carry that around here, if it were. Sounds kind of thin. What is that, water?
Watery.
I'm using poly on this and not just a urethane primer because on a repair like this, going into a paint job I did already, it'll tend to try to ring around these areas later down the road or shrink. Poly will not, so it's always a good thing to use for that. And I want to paint this as soon as possible so poly won't shrink, and I can prime this now and paint it during the week sometime and not worry about it. Well, that should be good. I didn't want to pile it on there too many coats. I just want to get the repair area covered and be able to sand that without breaking through. I could probably end up just finishing this off in 400, 600 and then painting right over it, not needing to prime it with urethane. If I do choose to block this more aggressively, if I don't think it turned out good enough, then I'll put a urethane primer on top of that. But it looks pretty good. We'll see how it blocks out. Alright, so it's been a couple days. I'm going to guide coat that and sand it with some 180, 320. Here's my leftover primer. As you can see, this is why I say to use poly, because it doesn't shrink. Although I have had some shrink some. I know slick sand, it'll stay the same size as this cup for pretty much forever. I've had this stuff shrink a little bit before. But you can tell, well, you can't tell, if I can push on this a little with my nail. So it's not fully hardened. But I finished off that bodywork in pretty much 320, so I'm not too worried about shrinkage. I like dry guide coat because it gets everything covered versus if you spray guide coat on, unless you spray it solid, you just mist it on like people usually do. There'll be areas that don't have primer on it, and that's how you miss pinholes and stuff like that. figure out what I'm going to block this with, as far as what block I'm going to use. So I'm going to do a little 180, then re-guide coat it, and 320 it. Re-guide coat. Some 320. Same thing. All over again. And there it is, handed out to 320. I'll get this cleaned up, remasked, and shoot a couple coats of urethane primer on it. Probably just wet sand that with a soft pad and some 600. And it'll be ready to paint. Still don't know if I'm blending the door or not. See how much room I end up with when I'm done. Didn't have any paint left from when I painted the car, so we had to go buy a pint. And it may match good, and it may be a little different. Well, that's that. We'll put a couple good coats on there. And let that sit till probably Saturday. Wet sand it with 600. Blend prep the fender and look at my color and see if I have enough room to stay in the fender. Sun's out. Well, here we are. I sanded the primer with 500. Blocked it out with 500 dry. Then went and blend prepped the fender with 800 on a DA. And now it's ready to mask and paint. I'm going to try to stay on the fender. I got about a foot or more. Obviously a little more. If the color's good, shouldn't be an issue. My luck, I'll paint it and it's not going to match, and then I'm going to paint the fender and the door again. So we'll see what happens. The repair turned out pretty good. The fender's not exactly correct. It's supposed to be out a little bit more right here and gradually kind of come out the whole way. but it's pretty much flat. But that's how this one's gonna be. Other than that, it's straight and should be fine. Bolted the inner fender back in just so I don't have to, wanted to make sure, because it was bent too. Hammered that out, Jim did. So I put it back in to make sure it wasn't going to pull the fender one way or the other. And now that it's in there, I'm going to leave it in there so I don't scratch the fender after it's painted. Putting it in or out, which is fine. It was painted when I painted this car. It was in there anyway, so whatever. No, there she is. Plenty of dirt. Put 3 coats on it. So should be able to sand it with 15 2003 and buff it. It'll be good. Hopefully. Should match. Color's a little different. Had enough blend room and barely have any color back here. Shouldn't have changed anything. Same brand of paint. We didn't have any left from when we painted it, but who knows. Angel mixed the gallon when we painted this because she worked at the paint store at the time, I think. And well, no, she didn't, but she bought the paint for this before she left. So she got a discount on it. But anyway, I just had a pint mixed for this. It's a little different, but pretty close. A little more metallic-y maybe. But this is Sherwin. Before we used Martin Senior. But they're the same thing. But I have ran into their formulas being slightly different. Even though they're the same paint. So, who knows? I know it is what it is. And it should be fine.